My name is Amelia Rhodes, and on paper, I am the kind of woman people describe with glossy words that look impressive in business magazines, but feel oddly hollow in my chest. I am 37, the CEO of a mid-sized tech consulting firm that somehow ballooned into a powerhouse after the divorce. Some say I built my empire out of spreadsheets, cold coffee, and sheer spite. They're not entirely wrong. My ex-husband left me with a 3-year-old boy, a pile of legal bills, and the gnawing suspicion that love was a rigged game. I decided from that moment that I would never be the one caught losing again. Now my son, Oliver, is 9, bright, sensitive, endlessly curious, and with a knack for blurting out the sort of observations that make you laugh in public and want to die at the same time. I've spent years juggling his needs with the relentless calendar reminders that rule my phone. Board meetings at 9, soccer practice at 4, dinner emails at 6, bedtime negotiations at 8. My life is a stitched quilt of efficiency, with very little space for anything that doesn't fit neatly between margins, which is why the man on the park bench caught me completely off guard. It was a crisp Saturday morning, the kind of morning when the city still smells faintly of last night's rain, with taxis splashing through puddles and vendors rattling their carts into position. Oliver insisted on bringing along a leftover croissant from breakfast, tucked carefully into a napkin like a precious relic. We strolled down toward Maplewood Park, my hair pinned back in its usual don't bother me bun, my blazer already feeling overdressed among the joggers and spandex. That's when Oliver stopped. In front of us sat a man, scruffy beard, layers of coats that didn't match, and eyes so startlingly blue they seemed borrowed from a summer sky. He wasn't holding a cardboard sign. He wasn't shaking a cup. He was just there, hunched slightly forward, as if the bench itself were keeping him alive. Oliver looked at him, then at the croissant, and then at me with that stubborn tilt of his chin I know too well. "Mom, can I give it to him?" I wanted to say no, to tug him along with some excuse about germs or strangers, or the million warnings mothers carry in their pockets. But the man's gaze lifted, and for a brief second, I felt as if I'd been caught in a spotlight. Not judged, not pitied, just seen. So I sighed, rolling my eyes for effect. "Fine, but don't blame me when you're hungry later." Oliver marched over like a miniature diplomat, holding out the pastry with both hands. "It's still good. I didn't lick it or anything." The man chuckled, a deep, warm sound that contrasted sharply with his ragged clothes. He accepted the offering as if it were gold. "Thank you, young sir. You may have just saved my morning." Oliver grinned, then retreated to my side, satisfied. I tried not to stare, but the way the man tore off a small piece and ate it slowly, almost reverently, made my throat tighten. We walked away, and I told myself that was that. Just another random act of kindness in the city. But Oliver had other plans. "Mom," he whispered conspiratorially, "he doesn't look scary. He looks like someone in one of those art books you show me. You know, the ones with sad faces." I forced a laugh. "That's called impressionism, darling. And that man is not a painting." Still, as we continued our loop around the park, I found my eyes drifting back to the bench. The man was sketching, of all things, on a torn piece of cardboard, using a stub of pencil. His hand moved with confidence, lines flowing like water. By the time we circled back, he had produced a surprisingly accurate portrait of a pigeon strutting nearby, complete with tiny scribbled feathers. I pretended to check my phone, but Oliver marched right up again. "You're an artist," he declared. The man looked up, startled, then gave a modest shrug. "Used to be." I groaned inwardly, knowing I was about to be dragged into conversation. Oliver was already tugging my sleeve. Mom, look, he's really good. You should see. And so I did. Against my better judgment, I stepped closer. The sketch was rough, yes, but undeniably alive, as though the pigeon might just flap its wings and walk off the cardboard. I couldn't help myself. That's impressive. He smiled faintly, revealing a flash of white teeth behind the beard. Impressive is usually reserved for quarterly reports, isn't it? I blinked. Was that a jab or humor? Either way, I was caught off guard enough to let out a small laugh. I suppose so. For the rest of the morning, Oliver hovered near him, chatting about superheroes and dinosaurs, while I stood awkwardly, debating whether this counted as reckless parenting. Eventually, I tugged my son away, with promises of hot chocolate, leaving the man and his cardboard canvas behind. But his eyes lingered in my mind long after we returned to our sleek apartment with its stainless steel appliances and meticulously curated furniture. That night, as I tucked Oliver into bed, he whispered, "Mom, do you think we'll see him again?" I told him probably not, but in the quiet, I knew the city has a way of arranging repeat encounters, whether you want them or not. I have often been told that I live like a machine, wake at 6, emails by 7, meetings by 9, strategy sessions until the afternoon. My calendar looks like a Tetris board, every gap filled, every hour accounted for. It's a survival mechanism, really. If I stop moving, the silence creeps in, and silence has never been kind to me. But on Tuesday evening, silence found me anyway. The office lights had dimmed, most of my team long gone, leaving me in the glass tower of Rhodes Consulting with only the hum of servers and the glow of my laptop for company. I should have been preparing slides for an investor pitch. Instead, my mind wandered back to the man on the park bench. It was absurd, really. I'd met thousands of polished, powerful men in Armani suits. None of them stuck in my head the way he did, sitting there in mismatched layers, drawing birds on cardboard. What was his name? Did he even have one anymore, or had the city swallowed it whole? I shut the laptop with a sharp click. Enough. I still had to pick up Oliver from after-school care, then bribe him into doing his math homework. Real life, not imaginary portraits of strangers. Except real life had a sense of humor. When Oliver and I walked through the park again the following Saturday, there he was. Same bench, same posture, except this time, he wasn't sketching pigeons. He was drawing Oliver. My son stood frozen, watching his likeness appear in graphite strokes. His messy hair, his too big hoodie, even the crooked smile he wore when he thought no one was looking. I opened my mouth to object. Privacy, boundaries, stranger danger, but then I saw it. The picture wasn't just a drawing, it was alive. Somehow, in a few lines, this man had captured my son's entire spirit. Mischievous, gentle, hopeful. Oliver gasped. "That's me." The man handed over the cardboard carefully, as though it were fragile china. "You've got an honest face. Easy to draw." I should have dragged Oliver away. Instead, I heard myself asking, "Did you study art formally?" For a moment, his expression shuddered. Then he nodded. I was at Parsons, had a couple of shows, galleries, collectors, the whole deal. He gave a half smile, equal parts pride and regret. Then life got complicated. Complicated. That was a polite word for disaster. I knew it well. My own life had been complicated enough times to understand the unsaid parts. Oliver plopped down next to him, fearless. Mom says complicated means grown-ups mess something up but don't want to talk about it. I nearly choked. "Oliver!" But the man laughed, really laughed, shoulders shaking. "Your son is sharp. He's right, though. I did mess up." His honesty unnerved me. I wasn't used to men confessing weakness so easily. In my world, weakness was hidden behind quarterly targets and flawless presentations. I crossed my arms, defensive without meaning to. And now? He leaned back, eyes on the bare branches overhead. Now I draw, I survive, and some days that's enough. Oliver studied him curiously. What's your name? The pause was so long I wondered if he'd forgotten. Then, Ethan? Just Ethan. No last name, no job title, no LinkedIn profile waiting to be checked later. Just a man with a pencil and 1,000 untold stories. We ended up talking longer than I intended. He asked about Oliver's school, about soccer, even about my work. When I mentioned consulting, he nodded knowingly. So you're the kind of person who fixes other people's messes while hiding your own. I narrowed my eyes. That's a cheap shot. True shot, he said softly, and somehow it didn't feel insulting. When we finally left, Oliver waved as though he'd made a lifelong friend. I gave a brisk nod, pretending not to notice the warmth creeping into my chest. That night, as I washed dishes in the too-quiet kitchen, I caught myself wondering, how does someone go from gallery openings to park benches, from canvases to cardboard? And why did I, of all people, care? If I had $1 for every time someone told me they didn't know how I do it all, I'd have, well, several more dollars to add to the pile I already obsess over. But the truth is, I don't do it all. I just make it look presentable from a distance, the way a living room looks tidy when you shove everything into one closet. Monday morning was textbook chaos. Oliver couldn't find his sneakers, my assistant was texting me about a client meltdown, and I managed to pour coffee into my travel mug without realizing the lid wasn't screwed on. By the time we reached the car, I looked like I'd lost a fight with a latte machine. Mom, Oliver said helpfully, you smell like Starbucks exploded. I sighed, dabbing at my blouse with a napkin. Thank you, darling. Always good to start the week with constructive feedback. We made it to school with seconds to spare, Oliver darting off with his backpack bouncing behind him. I waved, watching him disappear into the crowd of children, feeling that familiar tug in my chest, the one that reminds me I'm both mother and father, cheerleader and drill sergeant, always wondering if I'm enough of either. Then it was back into the slipstream of my life, conference calls, budget approvals, lunches eaten at my desk. My colleagues see Amelia Rhodes, unflappable CEO, slicing through problems like a hot knife through butter. What they don't see is the mental post-it note at the back of my head. Ethan, park bench, blue eyes, cardboard sketch. It was ridiculous. I barely knew him. And yet the memory of his laugh, that unguarded honesty, had lodged itself in me like a pebble in a shoe. No matter how fast I walked, I couldn't shake it. By Wednesday, Oliver had picked up on my distraction. Children are bloodhounds. When it comes to sniffing out secrets, you're not even aware you're keeping. At dinner, halfway through his spaghetti, he asked, Mom, are you going to marry Ethan? I nearly choked on my wine. Excuse me? You know, the artist guy, you like him. I do not, I started, then realized how ridiculous I sounded arguing with a 9-year-old. Oliver, I've spoken to him twice. That doesn't mean anything. He slurped a noodle thoughtfully. Dad dated 3 different ladies after you. You always know when grown-ups like someone. Their faces go all soft, like pudding. I laughed despite myself. Pudding? That's your barometer for romance? Yep, he said confidently. And your face goes pudding when you talk about Ethan. I wanted to protest, but the truth is, Oliver wasn't wrong. Something about that man had slipped past my armor, and I didn't know what to do about it. On Thursday evening, after a long day of investor negotiations, I took Oliver back to the park. I told myself it was for the fresh air, for the exercise, for Oliver. But as soon as we turned the corner and I saw the familiar bench, my stomach betrayed me with a flutter. He was there, sketchbook balanced on his knees, this time instead of cardboard. When he noticed us, his face lit up, not with surprise, but with recognition, as though he'd been expecting us all along. Oliver ran ahead, plopping down beside him as if they were old friends. "Do you draw superheroes?" "Only on special occasions," Ethan replied. I lingered a few steps back, arms crossed, pretending to be unimpressed. But when Ethan looked up at me, eyebrow raised in silent greeting, I felt the corners of my mouth betray me with the ghost of a smile. I hated how easy it was. The thing about letting a stranger orbit your life is that sooner or later you start craving answers. Who are they really? Where did they come from? And why, out of all the park benches in the city, did fate decide yours had to be the one their shadow falls across? That Saturday, Oliver and I brought sandwiches to the park. His idea, not mine, though I found myself going along with it more willingly than I'd like to admit. Ethan was there, sketchbook open, pencil dancing across the page with a confidence that didn't belong to someone society had labeled homeless. Oliver ran ahead, already unwrapping his sandwich. I followed at a slower pace, telling myself I was just being polite. Not interested, not curious, just polite. Ethan looked up, his face softening into that lopsided grin. "Lunch delivery?" "Don't get used to it," I said, setting down the paper bag. "This is a one-time humanitarian gesture." He chuckled, tearing the sandwich neatly in half before taking a small bite. It was strange how even eating, he seemed deliberate, like every action was part of some private ritual. Oliver asked about the sketchbook, leaning so close I worried he'd smudge the page. Ethan turned it so we could both see. A series of faces stared back. People from the park, street vendors, joggers, even the barista from the corner cafe. Each one alive, vibrant, pulled into existence with a few strokes of graphite. I caught myself whispering, "You're good, more than good." His gaze flicked up to mine. For once, he didn't deflect with humor. "I used to be better." There was weight in those words, heavy enough that silence settled between us. I should have left it there, but my tongue betrayed me. What happened? Ethan exhaled slowly, eyes fixed on the page. I had a life, a wife, a gallery that actually believed in me. For a while, it felt like the world was wide open. His pencil hovered, as though sketching ghosts. Then she got sick. Medical bills stacked up, shows fell through. I sold everything I owned to keep us afloat. And when she died, his voice faltered. I didn't have the will to rebuild, or maybe I just didn't know how. Oliver, wide-eyed, whispered, "I'm sorry." Ethan ruffled his hair gently. "Thanks, kid. That means more than you think." I sat frozen, heart aching in places I'd carefully walled off. My divorce had left scars, yes, but this was grief that had hollowed him out and left him raw. I wanted to comfort him, but my instinct was to pull back, to armor up. Compassion was dangerous. Compassion had a way of slipping into intimacy, and intimacy had a track record of wrecking me. So instead I said briskly, "Everyone's life gets complicated. Doesn't mean you give up." The word sounded harsher than I intended, but he only nodded. True. Which is why I keep drawing. It's the only part of me I still recognize. Later, walking back to the car with Oliver bouncing ahead, I felt the strange heat of shame creep into my cheeks. For all my wealth, my power suits, my calendar bursting with meetings, I couldn't shake the sense that Ethan, penniless, bearded, surviving on park benches, understood himself better than I ever had. That night, as I scrolled through my endless emails, I found myself closing the laptop mid-sentence. I stared out the window at the city lights, a glass of wine untouched beside me. And for the first time in years, I wondered what it might mean to know someone, not for what they can achieve, but for what they've lost, and survived anyway. Dating is a muscle I hadn't flexed in nearly a decade. After the divorce, I told myself I was too busy or too focused on Oliver to waste time on men. The truth? I was terrified. Terrified of being disappointed again, of watching someone peel back layers until all that remained was regret. So when Ethan suggested we grab dinner, nothing fancy, just burgers at a diner, I almost said no. In fact, the word hovered on my lips, but Oliver was standing there, eyes wide, practically vibrating with hope. "Go, Mom," he urged. "You never do fun stuff." And just like that, I was outnumbered. I showed up at the diner on Friday night wearing the least corporate outfit I owned. Jeans, a sweater that didn't scream boardroom, and a pair of sneakers I hadn't worn since college. Ethan was already at a booth, sketchbook beside him, sipping water like he belonged there. He looked cleaner, too. Someone must have let him borrow a razor because the beard was trimmed. He almost looked normal. "Wow," I said before I could stop myself. "You clean up," he grinned. "And here I thought you'd like me for my rugged, windswept aesthetic." The banter was easy, easier than I expected. We ordered burgers, fries, milkshakes. I even laughed when Ethan teased me for cutting my burger with a knife and fork. For a moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Light. Then, the bell over the door jingled and in-barreled Oliver. I nearly choked on my vanilla shake. "What? How?" Behind him, my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, waved sheepishly. He insisted, said it was an emergency. She gave me a thumbs up and retreated, abandoning me to my fate. Oliver slid into the booth beside Ethan as if he'd been invited. "So, what are we talking about? Do you guys kiss yet?" My face went nuclear. "Oliver!" Ethan burst out laughing so hard he nearly spilled his drink. "Not yet, buddy, but thanks for the pressure." The rest of the date was a blur of spaghetti-level chaos. Oliver stole half my fries, quizzed Ethan on dinosaurs, and loudly asked if he was poor because he didn't own a car. Ethan handled it all with grace, even turning the car question into a joke about how artists can teleport via imagination. Oliver ate it up. Me? I sat there equal parts mortified and strangely charmed, because here was a man who didn't flinch at my son's blunt honesty, who didn't squirm or fake politeness. He leaned in, he listened, he laughed. When we finally spilled out onto the sidewalk, Oliver swinging between us, I felt a pang of something dangerously close to joy, and it scared me senseless. Later that night, as Oliver snored in his bed and I stared at the ceiling, I realized something. I could survive chaos at work, in courtrooms, in negotiations. But this messy, unpredictable, heart-shaped chaos, I wasn't sure I was ready for. The Monday after our so-called family burger night, I walked into the office lobby with the same steel posture I'd perfected years ago. Chin up, heels clicking against marble, phone glued to my ear. But even as I spoke briskly about quarterly projections, my mind replayed Oliver's gleeful interrogation at the diner. "Do you guys kiss yet?" That child had no filter, no brakes. And the worst part? Ethan hadn't flinched. He had laughed, rolled with it, turned my son's blunt words into a joke instead of an embarrassment. Most men in my orbit would have squirmed, checking their Rolexes, searching for the exit. Ethan stayed. Ethan leaned in. But in the sterile glass tower of Rhodes Consulting, that memory felt like contraband. I adjusted my blazer, smoothed my hair, and reminded myself who I was. CEO, strategist, single mother, who had clawed her way back from the humiliation of divorce. The woman who controlled her narrative. the woman who didn't let anyone chip away at her edges. Except narratives have a way of slipping when you're not careful. At lunch, I joined 2 colleagues, Rachel from PR and Thomas from finance, at a trendy cafe near the office. It was supposed to be a quick meeting, just a check-in before our upcoming investor roadshow. But Rachel leaned across the table, her voice conspiratorial. "So, Amelia, who's the mystery man?" I froze mid-sip of iced tea. "Excuse me?" She smirked. "Don't play coy. Someone saw you at Greenleaf Diner Friday night, with a bearded guy and a kid in tow. You don't usually do diners, do you?" I forced a laugh. "That was Oliver's idea. And the man is a friend." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Not your usual type, if I may say so. Word is, he's not exactly Wall Street material." There it was. The first sting of judgment. Not overt, not cruel, but sharp enough to cut. I wanted to snap back, to remind them my personal life was none of their business. Instead, I found myself carefully arranging my salad leaves as if they might shield me. Rachel tilted her head. "You know, people talk, Amelia. It's just unusual. You could have anyone." I smiled tightly. "Maybe I don't want anyone. Maybe I want someone who makes Oliver laugh." That shut her up for a moment, but I knew the whispers wouldn't stop there. In my world, optics mattered. Every association, every dinner companion, every photo snapped in the wrong place. It all became currency. And suddenly, I was painfully aware of how fragile my currency could be. That evening, I picked Oliver up from soccer practice. He bounced into the car, hair sweaty, cheeks flushed. "Can we go see Ethan?" he asked immediately, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. I hesitated, knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Not tonight. I have work." Oliver pouted. "You always have work." Guilt twisted in me, sharp and familiar. "Tomorrow," I promised, though I wasn't sure if I meant it. When tomorrow came, we did go. The park was busy with joggers and dog walkers, but Ethan sat in his usual spot, sketchbook balanced on his knees. When he saw Oliver, his entire face lit up in a way that made my heart ache. He waved me over, but before I could respond, I caught sight of a pair of women on a nearby bench, whispering, glancing our way. Their eyes slid over Ethan's ragged jacket, then over me in my tailored coat and polished boots. The contrast was stark. I could almost hear their thoughts. Why is she with him? Heat rose in my cheeks, but I forced myself to walk forward, to sit down. Ethan looked at me curiously. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I lied. Oliver didn't notice the tension. He was already showing Ethan his latest math test, beaming with pride. Ethan congratulated him as though it were a Nobel Prize, and Oliver preened under the attention. I tried to relax, but the weight of those stares lingered. I had built my entire identity on being untouchable, unimpeachable. And here I was, sitting beside a man society had already written off as irrelevant. Later, as the sun dipped and we walked back to the car, I blurted, "Do you realize people judge me for sitting with you?" Ethan blinked, then gave a small, weary smile. "Of course they do. People judge me for existing. Doesn't bother me anymore." "Well, it bothers me," I snapped, then regretted the sharpness instantly. He studied me, not angry, not wounded, just steady. "Then you have to ask yourself why. Is it because you care about them, or because you care about yourself?" The words landed like stones in my chest. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, wiping off my makeup, staring at my reflection. Who was I really afraid of? The bored? The gossip? Or the possibility that Ethan's world might expose cracks in mine? For years, I had believed survival meant control. Polished surfaces, perfect timing, never letting anyone see me sweat. But sitting on that bench, Hearing him speak so plainly, I wondered if survival might mean something else entirely, something riskier, something terrifying, and maybe, just maybe, something worth it. Thursday evenings were usually reserved for board meetings and overpriced wine I pretended to enjoy. My firm had just secured a high-profile partnership with a European luxury brand, and the celebratory dinner was being hosted at the Meridian, one of those restaurants where the lighting is low enough to forgive both wrinkles and bad decisions. I wore my sharpest black dress, the one that whispered power without trying too hard, and slipped into the room with the confidence of a woman who belonged. Because I did belong. I had built this place for myself, brick by relentless brick. The evening unfolded in the usual blur of handshakes, champagne flutes, and cautious laughter. But halfway through the second course, as I excused myself to take a call, fate ambushed me in the lobby. There, leaning casually against the marble wall, was Ethan. Not in his park bench layers, not with his scruffy beard and mismatched coats. Tonight, he wore a clean shirt, slightly wrinkled, yes, but undeniably presentable, and his hair was tied back. He was talking to someone, gesturing with that same animated intensity he had when sketching. I froze. My worlds weren't supposed to collide like this. Before I could retreat, a voice cut through. "Rhodes, come here." It was David Langford, the CEO of the brand we were partnering with. He was grinning, glass in hand, and beside him, God help me, was Ethan. "You two know each other?" David asked. Ethan looked at me, surprise flickering across his face. Then amusement. "We've met." David clapped him on the back. "This man used to be the talk of the art world. I went to one of your shows in Soho back in the day. Remember that installation with the shattered mirrors? Genius. What the hell are you doing slumming it in this city?" The air between us thickened. My pulse hammered. Ethan gave a half smile, the kind that hid more than it revealed. "Life happened. You know how it goes." David roared with laughter, oblivious. "Well, you should come by the office sometime. We're always looking for fresh creativity. Might even commission something." I stared, words tangled on my tongue. The Ethan I knew, the one who drew pigeons on cardboard and shared sandwiches with my son, suddenly shimmered with a past I hadn't fully imagined. Galleries, installations, recognition from men like David. When David was pulled away by a waiter, I finally found my voice. "You didn't tell me." Ethan shrugged. "You didn't ask." "That's not fair," I snapped, though I wasn't sure why anger was my default. "I've been letting you into my life. Don't you think I deserve the truth?" His eyes met mine, steady, unflinching. "And what is the truth, Amelia? That I once mattered? That I lost it all? Does that make me more acceptable in your world?" The words pierced. Because yes, part of me had relaxed when David confirmed Ethan's talent, as if external validation made him safer, more real, and I hated myself for it. We stood in silence, the hum of conversation swirling around us, until he finally said softly, "I'm not a resume. I'm a man trying to start over. If that's not enough, then maybe we should stop pretending." Then he turned, walking out into the night without waiting for a reply. I spent the rest of the evening smiling for investors, nodding at jokes, raising my glass on cue. But my mind was nowhere near the glittering table. It was outside, on the street, following the trail of a man who had once been extraordinary, and might still be if someone cared enough to believe in him again. When I returned home, Oliver was asleep, his arm flung dramatically across his pillow. I sat on the edge of his bed, brushing hair from his forehead, and whispered into the dark, "What am I doing?" He didn't answer, of course, but the silence carried a weight I couldn't escape. The following week stretched me thin in ways I hadn't felt in years. My firm was preparing for the biggest deal of its history, a merger that could catapult us into the global market. It was the kind of move that CEOs dream of, the sort of chess piece that gets you profiled in Forbes and whispered about in boardrooms. Every morning, my phone exploded with emails before I'd even left bed. Oliver's cereal went soggy while I muttered into Bluetooth calls, trying to balance school drop-offs with international negotiations. By noon, I was sprinting between conference rooms, smiling so hard my jaw ached. But under the polished armor, my thoughts kept veering toward Ethan. The image of him at the Meridian lobby haunted me. Not just the clean shirt, not just David's drunken praise, but the way Ethan had looked at me when he said, "I'm not a resume, I'm a man trying to start over." That sentence replayed in my head during every PowerPoint slide, every catered lunch, every late-night strategy session. I was living in two cities layered on top of each other. The city of glass towers and corporate jargon, and the city of park benches, cardboard sketches, and Oliver's laughter echoing in the dusk. And the longer I tried to straddle both, the more it felt like I was failing at each. One evening, I stumbled home after a 14-hour day, heels clicking across the hardwood. The apartment looked like a small war had been waged, Lego scattered across the rug, a half-eaten grilled cheese congealing on the counter, Oliver sprawled on the couch watching cartoons. "Hi, Mom," he said without looking up. His tone was light, but I caught the flicker of disappointment. Guilt twisted my stomach. "Did Mrs. Patterson pick you up again?" He nodded, eyes glued to the screen. I sank onto the couch beside him, pulling him into a hug. He resisted at first, then leaned into me with the stubborn warmth only children can give. "I'm sorry, Ollie. Big week at work." He didn't answer, but the silence was louder than any words. Later that night, when he was asleep, I called Ethan. I hadn't planned to. My finger hovered over the screen for long seconds, my heart thumping like I was 17 again. He answered on the second ring, voice low and rough. "Amelia? I just needed to hear someone who isn't talking about profit margins," I confessed, sinking into my kitchen stool. He chuckled softly. "That bad?" "Worse," I said, and to my horror, my voice cracked. There was a pause, then his voice gentle. "You don't always have to be steel, you know. You're allowed to be tired." I blinked back tears, laughing shakily. "You make it sound so easy." "It isn't, but it's human." We talked for nearly an hour. About nothing, about everything. He told me about a stray dog that followed him around the park, about the way sunset light hit the skyscrapers like molten gold. I told him about Oliver's latest obsession with dinosaurs, about how I sometimes worried my son would remember me as a calendar notification more than a mother. For the first time in weeks, I felt lighter. But the next morning, reality snapped its jaws again. Rachel from PR cornered me in the office, whispering urgently, "The investors are nervous. They're asking about your associations." It took me a beat to understand. "Associations?" She lowered her voice. "The man, the artist. People talk, Amelia. They're wondering if you're distracted, if your judgment is compromised." Heat surged up my neck. Anger, shame, defensiveness tangled in one messy knot. My personal life is none of their business. Rachel's gaze was sympathetic but firm. In our world, it always is. That evening, I found myself pacing my apartment, staring at the city lights outside the window. The choice loomed like a storm cloud. Pursue the merger with every ounce of focus I had, or admit that part of me wanted to step off the treadmill and claim a different kind of life. Oliver padded into the kitchen in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes. "Mom, why are you still dressed?" I scooped him up, holding him close, breathing in the scent of shampoo and childhood. His small arms wrapped around my neck, anchoring me in a way no deal ever had. And in that quiet moment, I knew. Whatever path I chose, someone would pay the price. The city has a way of swallowing you whole if you let it. Endless deadlines, traffic snarls, buzzing phones. But every so often, if you're lucky, it hands you a pocket of time that feels like it belongs to no one but you. That Saturday was one of those days. Oliver bounded into my bedroom at 8 a.m., brandishing a flyer he must have scavenged from school. "Mom, there's a pizza festival at Riverside Plaza. Can we go? Please, 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 please." I blinked against the morning sun, groggy from another night of staring at spreadsheets long past midnight. "A pizza? Festival? Yes!" His eyes sparkled like it was Christmas. All kinds. Deep dish, thin crust, stuffed crust, even pineapple, which I know you hate but Ethan might like. The name landed with a thud in the room. Ethan. My son had woven him seamlessly into our plans without hesitation, as though he were already family. I should have said no. I should have claimed work or fatigue or a million other excuses, but instead I found myself texting Ethan. "Pizza festival, 11 a.m. Want to join?" He replied within minutes. "Wouldn't miss it." By late morning, the three of us were weaving through the plaza, the air thick with the smell of tomato sauce, garlic, and sizzling cheese. Booths lined the square, each with its own shouting vendor, neon signs, and lines of hungry families. Oliver darted ahead, tugging Ethan's hand, leaving me to trail behind, watching them with a mixture of awe and unease. It looked so normal. Ethan bought Oliver a slice bigger than his head, then balanced his own plate precariously while sketching the crowd on a napkin with a borrowed pen. "Inspiration strikes everywhere," he said when I teased him. We ended up sprawled on the plaza steps, pizza boxes between us, the city buzzing around like a restless hive. Oliver narrated each bite as though he were a food critic. "This crust is crunchy, but not too crunchy. Sauce could use more oregano. Cheese ratio is excellent." Ethan laughed until tears gathered at the corners of his eyes. "Kid, you're going to own your own restaurant one day." Oliver puffed out his chest. "Maybe I'll hire you to draw the menu." I rolled my eyes, but my chest ached in the best way. Afterward, we wandered into a small board game shop tucked on a side street. Oliver begged for a new game, and against my usual no-nonsense parenting instincts, I said yes. That evening, the three of us crowded around my coffee table, battling over plastic figurines and dice. Oliver shrieked with laughter whenever Ethan cheated blatantly, and I laughed too, realizing I hadn't let myself sound that free in years. The apartment was messy, noisy, alive, and for a few hours I forgot about mergers, investors, optics, judgment. For a few hours I was just Amelia, a mom, a woman, someone who could laugh until her stomach hurt. When Oliver finally crashed in bed, leaving half the game abandoned on the floor, Ethan and I sat on the couch in the quiet aftermath. The city lights glowed through the window, painting him in gold and shadow. "You're good with him," I said softly. He shrugged, gaze distant. "He reminds me of what I lost, but in a good way, like maybe I get to borrow a piece of it again." Something inside me tightened. I wanted to reach for his hand, to let the moment collapse the distance between us. But my fear still sat heavy, a wall I hadn't decided to climb. So instead I offered a small smile. "Thank you. For today." He looked at me, eyes clear and steady. No. Thank you for letting me feel human again. We sat there, silence thick but gentle, until he finally stood to leave. As the door closed behind him, I leaned back against the couch, heart pounding. It had been such a small, ordinary day, and yet it felt like the kind of memory that would stay lodged forever, shining quietly in the dark. It happened on a Thursday evening, the kind that drags on forever, the kind where you're certain the clock is conspiring against you. I left the office late, my head still buzzing with numbers and contracts. By the time I picked up Oliver, the sky had turned bruised purple, the city lights glittering like a million watchful eyes. We cut through Maplewood Park on our way home. Ethan was there, as usual, sketchbook balanced on his knees, pencil moving in quick, confident strokes. When he saw us, he smiled, the kind of smile that made my chest warm, despite the chill in the air. But the moment shattered when another man approached. He was wiry, restless, with darting eyes and a jacket that looked like it had lived too many lives. He called out before I could process what was happening. "Ethan, you son of a bitch! I knew I'd find you here!" Ethan stiffened, the pencil pausing mid-line. His jaw tightened in a way I'd never seen before. Oliver, oblivious, whispered, "Is that your friend?" "No," Ethan said flatly. The man reached us, breath sharp with cigarettes, and something sourer. "You owe me. Don't pretend you don't remember. You think you can disappear, play the starving artist in the park, and the past won't come crawling back?" My heart lurched. I looked at Ethan, searching for an explanation. He stood, posture rigid, shoulders squared. "Not here," Ethan said through clenched teeth. "Not in front of them." The man sneered. "You think I care about your little charity project?" His gaze flicked to me, then Oliver, with a disdain that made my skin crawl. "You always were good at finding benefactors." I stepped forward, voice sharper than I intended. "That's enough," he laughed, bitter and harsh. "Look at you, Miss High and Mighty. You don't know what kind of man you're standing next to." Oliver pressed against my side, sensing the tension. My instinct screamed to shield him, to pull him away. But something in Ethan's eyes, raw, desperate, almost pleading, rooted me in place. "Leave," Ethan said, low and dangerous. For a tense beat, I thought the man might lunge, but then he spat on the ground, muttered something about debts not vanishing, and stalked off into the night, his figure swallowed by shadows. Silence fell heavy. I turned to Ethan, my voice trembling. "What was that?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he sank back onto the bench, rubbing his hands over his face. Finally, he said, "That was a ghost, one of many." I waited. He didn't look at me, but his words spilled out anyway. "After my wife died, I lost myself. I borrowed money I couldn't repay, made promises I couldn't keep. I thought if I drowned far enough, no one would notice. But ghosts don't drown, they float." I swallowed hard, adrenaline still sparking through my veins. "And now they found you." "Yes." Oliver tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, is he in trouble?" I smoothed his hair, heart aching. "Maybe, but we'll figure it out." Ethan finally looked at me then, blue eyes blazing with shame and something else. Fear. "I never wanted you to see this part of me. I wanted, God, I don't know what I wanted, to believe I could be new again, but you deserve the truth." I should have been furious. I should have told him to stay away from us, from Oliver. But all I could see was the man who made my son laugh, the man who sketched pigeons with reverence, the man who once had a gallery and a wife he'd loved enough to destroy himself trying to save. "You don't get to decide what I deserve," I said quietly. "You only get to decide whether you're going to keep running." The silence stretched, thick with everything unsaid. When we finally left, Oliver clutching my hand tightly, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking on a fault line, that the ground beneath us could split at any moment. The days after the confrontation in the park felt stretched thin, as though the air itself had grown fragile. Oliver asked about Ethan constantly, at breakfast, on the walk to school, even as I tucked him into bed. When's he coming back? Is he okay? Did the bad man hurt him? Each time I dodged with half answers, because the truth was, I didn't know. By Wednesday, I couldn't stand it anymore. After dropping Oliver at soccer practice, I went to Maplewood Park. The bench was empty, no sketchbook, no blue eyes, just a swirl of fallen leaves clinging to the wood. I almost left, but something kept me waiting. And then, like he'd been conjured, Ethan appeared, carrying nothing but the weight in his shoulders. "Amelia," he said softly. Relief surged, tangled with anger. "Where have you been? Oliver's been worried sick. I've been worried sick." He didn't sit. He stood there, hands shoved into his pockets, gaze fixed somewhere over my shoulder. "That's why I can't stay." The words slammed into me like cold water. "What?" "You saw it. The ghosts. They don't just haunt me, they follow me. And now they know about you. About Oliver. I can't risk that." I shook my head, heart racing. "So you think the answer is to disappear? To abandon the only people who actually..." My voice cracked before I could finish. Ethan's expression twisted, pain etched deep. "Don't you understand? Leaving is the only way I can protect you." It was infuriating, that old heroic instinct men cling to, pretending sacrifice is noble, when really it's just fear in a prettier suit. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him he was wrong. But beneath the anger was something worse, the sting of recognition, because I knew what it was to protect yourself by shutting people out. I'd done it for years. I forced my voice steady. And what about Oliver? He doesn't need protection from you. He needs you. Ethan flinched. He needs stability, a father who doesn't live in shadows. His real father barely shows up, I snapped. At least you... I stopped, chest tight, realizing what I'd been about to say. At least you love him. We stood locked in silence, the city humming around us, neither willing to surrender. Finally, Ethan broke it. "I can't give you what you deserve, Amelia. Not now. Maybe not ever." And before I could find words strong enough to stop him, he turned and walked away. This time he didn't look back. I sat on the bench long after he disappeared, the autumn chill seeping into my bones. I thought of Oliver's laugh when Ethan cheated at board games, of the pigeon sketch, of the way his eyes softened whenever he saw us. And I thought of myself, steel-plated, efficient, controlled, suddenly cracked open in ways I couldn't mend. That night, Oliver sensed it before I said a word. "He's not coming back, is he?" I pulled him close, pressing my lips to his hair. "I don't know, sweetheart." He was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "I wish you'd tell him we don't care about ghosts." Tears stung my eyes, out of the mouths of children. I lay awake long past midnight, staring at the ceiling, torn between anger and longing, fear and hope. And slowly, painfully, I realized something. Ethan's choice to leave was about him, not us. His shame, his fear, his ghosts. But if he ever found the courage to fight them, to fight for us, then maybe, just maybe, the story wasn't finished. 3 months passed, long enough for winter to press itself against the city, for scarves and foggy windows to become part of our days. Long enough for the wound of Ethan's absence to scab over, even if it still ached when touched. Life resumed its steady march. Work consumed me with the usual hunger, and I let it. investors, expansion plans, late night strategy sessions. I buried myself in them, building walls out of spreadsheets and contracts. But Oliver was my compass. His resilience amazed me. He still asked about Ethan, though less often now, as though instinctively learning that some questions don't have immediate answers. He filled the silence with soccer, homework, and a newfound obsession with building elaborate Lego cities across the living room floor. One Saturday, I took him to an art fair at the community center. It seemed like the kind of motherly gesture a parenting blog would approve of, but really, I just wanted to fill the day with something brighter than my own thoughts. The gymnasium smelled of popcorn and fresh paint, lined with booths displaying pottery, jewelry, amateur watercolors. Oliver darted between tables, sticky hands clutching a balloon animal. I was halfway through politely admiring a ceramic bowl when I saw it. A painting, large, raw, alive. The canvas showed a city street at dusk, skyscrapers towering, but the focal point was small. A child's hand reaching up, grasping an adult's hand in shadow. The brushstrokes were both chaotic and tender, like grief wrestling with hope. And in the bottom corner, a signature I knew. My breath caught. I turned, and there he was. Ethan. Not on a park bench, not hiding beneath layers of shame, but standing beside his work. Hair tied back neatly, beard trimmed, eyes still the same impossible blue. He looked older, steadier, whole. When he saw me, he froze. For a heartbeat, the noise of the fair fell away. Then Oliver barreled into him, shouting his name, and the world snapped back into motion. Ethan knelt, hugging Oliver so tightly I thought they might both break. When he stood, his gaze met mine, cautious, hopeful, afraid. "I didn't know you'd be here," he said. "I didn't know you'd be here," I answered. We stood awkwardly amid the swirl of families and vendors. I wanted to demand explanations, apologies, promises, but instead I found myself whispering, "Your painting, it's beautiful." Something flickered in his eyes, a spark of pride mixed with disbelief. "It's the first one I've sold in years." I smiled, small but real. "Congratulations." Oliver tugged my sleeve. "Does this mean he's back?" Neither of us answered right away. We didn't need to. The question hung between us like a door, half open, waiting to be walked through. Ethan's gaze softened. "I don't know if I can erase the ghosts, but I'm trying, and I'd like another chance, if you'll have me." My throat tightened. For once I didn't overthink. I didn't weigh optics or gossip or boardroom whispers. I just listened to my son's laughter, to the thrum of my own heart, and nodded. Not a promise, not a fairy tale ending, just a beginning. As we left the fair together, Oliver skipping between us, I felt the city breathe differently. Still noisy, still imperfect, still relentless, but also full of possibility. And for the first time in years, so was I.